Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of Trinidad and Tobago, members of the media, listening public on the World Wide Web. We are here live at Balisier House. We thank you for coming to this press conference this afternoon. It's intended to be a confirmation of rumors and speculations that are moving right around our society, and it's intended to also be an update on a number of things that we have spoken about connected to these issues. I'm, of course, with our leader of government business for us, leader of opposition Chief Whip Marvin Gonzalez, who's here with us this evening. And we intend to firstly address, by way of confirmation, the fact that 4,608 forestry workers and contractors are now on the breadline. This afternoon, we received a flurry of communications, all of us in opposition, which showed us the position that we feared was coming. I want to just take you back to Sunday. On Sunday, we had a press conference held in Point Lisas at our community center, where we had several hundred contractors from the CPEP. On Sunday, we dealt with a legal team's address under the clinic chaired by our political leader, Penny Beckles. And we were representing then the interests of 10,700 CPEP workers and persons employed with contractors. If you look back to that event, we warned that our intelligence was that on Tuesday, that we would have seen the signs of forestry coming next on deck. I can tell you that the manager of the forestry National Reforestation Program was in fact listed yesterday, that is Tuesday. Today is Wednesday, and today at Wednesday, the CEO of the forestry division was instructed by the Minister of Finance as corporation sole to dismiss immediately all forestry contractors. That was met with the same formula approach used in CPEP, where again, corporation sole, which is Minister of Finance, instructed the CEO of CPEP to dismiss all workers. Now, we are faced with thousands of people literally out of employment now. Let me give you the number. The number is 19,810 people, broken down as follows. Let me repeat that. In less than 2 months of Yellow is the Curse, in less than 2 months of the UNC's government, you now have 19,810 people unemployed, fired, not renewed. 10,700 CPEP workers, 4,608 forestry workers, 140 change agents in Rural Development Ministry, 400 workers at WASA, 700 workers being COVID employees, as we are told, from the RHAs. I won't name which one because people are fearful of being whistleblowers. Another 900 at another RHA. You, of course, know the 10 executive managers at WASA. You know the governor of the central bank. And there are another 10 at the AGLA, which is the Attorney General's office. This is a combination of direct termination and non-renewal of contracts. But I add to that 2,341 interns at the HDC, because there were 2,341 people who engaged in the regular approved programs of works at HDC communities, particularly in the dry season. As you know, this has been a constant program. So that's 19,810 people. We have an interesting situation where boards of directors of these companies have not been populated. We have an unusual step where the corporation sole, the Minister of Finance, in other words, the government's direct shareholder, the government's direct hand, is taking the approach of instructing the CEOs to fire these persons. I want to remind you that the average CPEP worker and the average forestry worker takes home $1,400 a fortnight. That's $120 a day. And what is particularly harsh and oppressive, what is indeed wrong, what reeks of injustice, is that these terminations and non-renewals come about after ministers of government, let me name them, Barry Padarat, Saddam Hussein, much to a lesser extent, but nonetheless involved, the Minister of Finance himself, Dave Tanku, and others, have come forward to the population days after coming into office, and they made very serious allegations to say, what is it that Mr. Padarat says? The PNM boys and girls, friends and financiers. I mean, what really begs the question is, how does a minister of government come to the population and give facts with no space or time for investigation? It is beyond the laws of physics for anybody to come and tell us that they could have come to a conclusion in law based upon facts within 2 days of being in government or 1 week of being in government. The Privy Council has told us plainly, most recently in the Jaiwanti Ramdas case, that you have to be careful as to how you make statements, lest it be apparent bias, unless bias, of course, in other cases takes you to bad faith. And it is therefore incredible that people are being sent home within 7 weeks, 6 weeks, days after a government, the UNC government, comes into effect. And therefore, this screams of things like breach of the Constitution in terms of rights. It screams of the need for judicial review to look at these decisions. It screams of harsh and oppressive conduct in the industrial court. And the PNM has taken the position. We reminded you, in fact, I think it was the Newsday that was at my office on April 28th in San Fernando West. I forget which newspaper it was that did a live clip. I wasn't aware that they were there. And I told my team as I made the concession for the election, I warned that tyranny would reign on Trinidad and Tobago. And I was criticized in public. Again, I made that observation when the leader of the opposition was sworn in. And I remember being condemned by the UNC that I was saying things that were not true. But look at it today. We are less than 2 months in office, and 19,810 people have been dismissed as truth for one moment, where the allegation was made that 5,000 people went home. I want to remind you that there was a full process. People went home. If you look at the payout, it was over $1 billion in payout. Land, positions, people were re-employed. The entire program was designed and set that way. The union was strong as they ought to be. But it cannot be that you have in government. Mr. Elder was very vocal when he says that he was a victim of dismissal in TSTT. Mr. Batiste, Mr. Kesar. When you look to Mr. Aniset's being the only exception, you look to Mr. Roger, none of the union leaders are speaking about 20,000 people. And here's what the material difference is. They have not told the workers that they will receive their salaries. So there's this constant question going on. Workers are reaching out to contractors saying, well, will I be paid? When, remember, CPEP and forestry were in fact paying workers directly by automatic clearing. They would receive the monies in their bank accounts. You're being told you're being dismissed with immediate effect. You don't know what the status of your NIS contributions are because people count their contributions. Have you come up to the 180 contributions, etc.? There's been a vacuum. The one thing that we heard Mr. Elder speak about was that CPEP workers were collateral damage. Collateral to whom is the question. Is it not bad faith that you are firing people simply because they are associated or viewed to be representatives of the PNM? It cannot be in a society like this that this happens. I want to remind you that when the PNM came into power in 2015, not a single CPEP worker was sent home. Not a single URP worker was sent home. I ran a ministry at the Attorney General's office. There's a senator in that office right now, Senator Brian Baig. He worked with me for years after I became Attorney General. He was not sent home. His contract wasn't bought out. Where's his voice today? So I'm trying to tell you, it's very often that you hear people say, well, you all did this, and no, we did not. We did not do that, because you cannot play with the most vulnerable. I think that I'd also like to point out to you, you're going to be distracted by attacks on your character. I stand in the gap of being attacked on character all the time. People say, Faris, you are not allowed to talk for people. Since when? Yesterday I heard them call me Adrian Cola Rienzi, looking to stand up to speak for workers' rights. There is an outright attack, be it on independent senators. There was a most vile attack by the UNC's PRO, Kirk Megu, against Senator Vera. And that is in the face of the presiding officer of the Senate, that is Wade Mark, the Honorable President of the Senate, having warned that there is a careful line to be observed. Mr. Megu, Dr. Megu said to the world, I don't care about that. And that is where we are today, where you're being beaten into submission. Don't say anything. But today we have seen what the tyranny equals. Today is just a day to mark the spot. There will be further action. There'll be legal action. There'll be other forms of engaged, responsible action by the opposition. But today is the day that you know it's not yellow is the code, but yellow is the curse. Because it has to be a curse if you send home 19,810 people in 7 weeks, ladies and gentlemen. There's one more issue I think that we could traverse, and that is the news that security details were just stripped out from the Prime Minister, past Prime Minister Young and past Prime Minister Rowley. I make no comment on that other than I am surprised as a former Attorney General and as a former member of the National Security Council that the cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago can make a decision as to a national security issue. I'm very surprised at that. I would have no problem if it is the Commissioner of Police, after there is a security concern, addressing the issue, because obviously we have a sitting Commissioner of Police who is a former special branch officer himself and would understand these things. But what I find curious is, since when it is the prerogative of a cabinet to decide on security issues. Let me remind you, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa has received continuous detailed security for 10 full years. 10 full years. Dr. Rowley, when he was the leader of the opposition, did not have detailed security. It was only Commissioner, it was then Minister of National Security, Gary Griffith, who broke ranks and said, look, if half the country like you and the other half don't like you, let's do a threat assessment and decide this thing on an arm's length basis. And that is how it happened. I don't make complaint. Neither Dr. Rowley nor Mr. Young have made any request for anything at all. They have not spoken to us. They have not made any reflections on this. But I am obliged to say that I find it curious that a cabinet could be making these decisions, not anything more than that, because neither of those gentlemen have made any position. I raise this because I was asked the questions prior to the start of the conference as to whether any of this would be addressed, so I thought I would raise it up front. Today, the priority is 19,810 people who have been terminated or whose employment has ended in a mere 7 weeks of yellow is the curse. And that is something that the population must stand up to, pay attention, because if the sole reason coming so far is your name is associated with the PNM, if you could have your name advertised as receiving a bus route pass, we had the list of bus route persons under the UNC. Did you ever see us publish it? Call people's names? Did we see a position of anything resembling that? This is what you call naked, abhorrent, disgusting behavior on the part of a government. And all that I could do is to plead with the government, in part, to say, please have mercy for the people who are closest to the ground, those who earn $120 a day. Knock yourselves out, criticize opposition members all you want, make derogatory statements all you want, but you have to at least give the people the decency of an explanation as to their future. It cannot be that you just make an announcement by way of a letter. One person gets a letter, another person is panicked. Did you get a letter? And then you realize 1, 2, 3, 4, 19,000 people are now out of a job. That is not the way you have the obligation to run a country. You can explain yourself. You can provide a position. When the Petrotrin scenario was going on, there was a full national explanation. The unions were involved. They were brought into meetings. They had the option to purchase shares in the companies that were continuing. They said there would be payment of retiring benefits, ex gratia payments. Land would be given. Billions of dollars were spent in terms of ending the Petrotrin refinery position. It was never that 20,000 people nearly just woke up one morning and had no employment and no word and not knowing where their salary is. That is harsh. That is oppressive. That is bad faith. And that is not what governance is about. So I'll end at that point and I'll ask my colleague. Okay, so Mr. Gonzalez has said that we'll wait for your questions because I'm sure you may have some. So perhaps we can take your questions now.
On Sunday, you mentioned the point recess meeting, and this is not the first time that the opposition would have spoken about the treatment of workers. So far, even went as far as to say that legal consideration was on the table. My question is, what is the latest with that legal position that you're planning on taking? Have you drafted any reaction or anything soon?
Yeah, okay. Yes, I can confirm that. Well, we've already issued freedom of information requests, and our legal teams are drafting as we speak. I'm involved in it as well, as is Mr. Gonzalez. So we are in the process of working this out. What has happened today causes a material moment, because now you're not dealing with the near 11,000 CPEP workers alone. You're dealing with close to 5,000 additional persons in similar circumstances. Same letter of termination, same Minister of Finance as corporation sole firing, not a board firing, no assessment, no review, no conversation. So the facts are quite dynamic right now. What I can tell you is that it reeks of bad faith and it reeks of being harsh and oppressive. So the legal team is fully at work, and we will be taking steps with diligence to make sure that we protect persons' interests.
One of the promises of the government was that the workers themselves may be reemployed under new contracts. What, if anything, do you have to say to that?
It inflames the issue even further. They create another legitimate expectation without details. It may be something that people are relying upon, but isn't it the same government that has a minister named Mr. Elder who say these people are collateral damage? What does that mean? How could a man who comes from the union be telling people they are collateral damage? Doesn't that betray an entire lifetime of work? Just imagine this for a moment. A well-known union leader, Mr. Clyde Elder, comes publicly as a minister in a government and says that the workers are collateral damage. Hard luck is my summation. Hard luck. Does that sound to you as somebody that spent a lifetime in the union defending workers? It doesn't to me.
There is total in media. I want to ask Mr. Gonzalez at the convention. You gave a call to the population for PNM members, telling them to get their shoes ready, get ready. And it was in response to the situation involving CPEP workers.
Yes.
What happens now for this new cohort of people, these thousands that are now in the same boat? Are you going to also have a legal clinic for them?
Oh, most definitely. And as Senator Faris Alwari just indicated, that the legal team that we currently have in place, preparing to file matters in the High Court as well as the Industrial Court, with what is happening at this point in time as we speak, the legal strategy must now include those forestry workers that have been impacted by this latest oppressive action on the part of the government. It is not we are going to enjoin them in the same proceedings, But I can tell you that the legal team will also be looking at picking up those very cases and to take appropriate action against the government, both in the High Court and in the Industrial Court, to ensure that the workers' interests are protected. So definitely, we are not leaving the forestry workers aside. We are going to ensure that they receive the full protection of the law, and the legal team will be briefed. And as we speak, we started gathering all of the necessary information so that the same legal team and more attorneys are joining to ensure that we give legal support to what we are already providing to the CPEP workers. The forestry workers will now be given the same legal support so that their interests can be adequately protected. And the same way that I've called for CPEP workers, and this is something that we expected. Our intelligence have been very accurate so far that the government is coming for CPEP workers, they are coming for URP workers, they are going after workers in the reforestation program, and all of these workers, the regional health authority, and so far our intelligence have been quite accurate. So this is something that we have been expecting for some time, and I'll let you know, and I'll give you the assurance and the national population that we are standing by to offer protection to all of these workers.
Now, granted, Senator Rawi mentioned the silence of the union movement, save for Mr. Ansett matter. I want to ask what sort of mobilization, if any, would be coming from the People's National Movement?
We don't need, I will tell you this, we understand the difficulty that some of those union leaders have now found themselves. And that's the reason why we have a deafening silence from them. As a matter of fact, it was shocking that the first union leader to openly comment from within the government, within the cabinet, was Clyde Elder. And in a radio interview, I think it was yesterday. And so difficult was the position, or is the position for him, that he had to describe the situation for these mothers, single parents, as collateral damage. It says a lot. It says a lot about their mindset, that they are prepared to do what is politically convenient to them at this point in time, to the detriment of the workers, and the workers at the lower end of the economic ladder. We understand what it is all about. We understand fully what this is all about. And those union leaders who are involved in the government and who now form part of Kamla Prasad-Bissasa's cabinet, they know what this is all about. And they are prepared to sacrifice the interests of workers to meet their own political ends. We fully understand. And that's the reason why we in the PNM, we are doing what is necessary to defend those workers. Because we understand that those union leaders are now fully compromised in the matter, and therefore they lack the moral authority right now to speak on behalf of workers, because workers' rights are now sacrificed on the altar of political expediency in Trinidad and Tobago as we speak.
Could I join in just making an observation again? We accept that governments have the prerogative to create policy and to redesign things. When you win an election, you have to run a country. But what we're pointing out here, I want you to compare the position in Petrotrin to the position today. In Petrotrin, there was a committee established to analyze Petrotrin. Who participated in the committee? You must remember the OWTU was a member of the committee, correct? Mr. David Abdullah was a member of the committee. The union was brought into and provided with all of the evidence of the goings on in Petrotrin. When the options came about, one of them being the option to stop the hemorrhage of a $2 billion loss per year, the government came in via the board of directors of Heritage, what was its predecessor, Petrotrin, and said, listen, here is what's going to happen. You are going to receive your severance and retrenchment. You're going to receive monies. You're going to receive land. You're going to receive this. People will be rehired. Has any of that happened here for 20,000 people? The union complained bitterly, as they should, if they are advocates of the trade union movement. They said that what we did, inviting the union in for the reanalysis, identifying the monies, creating the process for reapplication, fell short. True or not true? So how on earth could you have Clyde Elder, Mr. Kesar, Mr. Roger, because he's speaking with the government on a continuous basis, and Mr. Batiste say absolutely nothing? How could you have them say this is collateral damage? Really and truly, I just want to remind you of the facts. Now, I'm saying that it is fair for a government to reassess something. But the rationale in Petrotrin had nothing to do with who was UNC and who was PNM. It had to do with the economy of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, didn't it? We laid the data forward. We brought the union into the room. They sat down at the table. They interrogated the documents. The union was invited to become shareholders in the new company. They would have been multi-millionaires as shareholders themselves. You know that. Where is the comparison today for that? And how do you therefore excuse that kind of behavior? Because I know it's tempting for people to say, well, them did that, so we got to do that. No, we didn't do that. We did not do that. And what we're saying today, let's step out of the pettiness of politics for a moment, because a lot of people describe politics as petty. We're talking about 19,810 people, 15,000, 16,000, 17,000, 18,000 earning minimum wage, $120 a day. Not even the line of sight of when you'll get your money. Check your bank account. Don't worry about it. Don't we have the big boast of the mother of the nation that, you know, people's hearts and minds matter? Don't we have a ministry of the people? Don't we have social development? Where are the services that they boasted about? They've created a ministry of the people, right? Where is the minister and the parliamentary secretary in the ministry of the people today? To deal with the social impact, to deal with the psychology of this trauma. Where is it when courts comes to knock on your door and say, where's my money? When your car loan is due, when your book lists have to fill, where is that? And I cannot accept. Faris can't say that because. No, this is where the population needs to speak up and to take careful notes. So those are the facts that I'd like you to compare on the, well, them did it and we could do it too. No, we never did that. And I find it interesting that Corporation Seoul, that Minister of Finance is the shareholder of these companies, is the one giving the instructions. So it connects the government directly into what is normally a board decision, as I'm sure you're aware.
I want to add to my colleague's response to Jensen's question with respect to the rehiring of those, or the so-called rehiring of those workers. Jensen, you would have heard Barry the Butcher saying that those employees are not employees of CPEP. He went to the greatest extent to make that point. We don't agree with him from a legal perspective, but let's use his words. Those employees are not employees of CPEP. They are actually employees of those private contractors. In the same vein, or rather in another corner of his mouth, he's trying to reassure the same workers that you will be rehired. Be rehired by whom? Other contractors that you are looking to bring into the program? Okay, what is the procurement process to rehire those contractors? Are you prepared to comply with the OPR to ensure that those new contractors are OPR compliant and you engage in a transparent process in the rehiring of those contractors? And when you get those contractors, are you, the government or the executive arm of the state, going to instruct those private contractors, because based on what you are saying, that's, you know, Hurricane or Barry the Butcher saying, that they are going to be employed, the 10 or 11,000 employees who have been impacted by this wicked act by the government, that they are going to be re-employed. Is it that he is saying that the government is now going to instruct those private contractors to rehire the same workers? What is the truth? And those are questions that need to be asked of the government. Because if you are saying that those workers have no affiliation with CPEP, they are engaged by private contractors, then after going through a transparent procurement process, the executive or the government of the day cannot instruct any private contractor to rehire the same workers who have been employed previously by other contractors. So in other words, we are saying it is simply not true. He is just putting that out there to appease the workers, and he is fully aware that those workers, there are no guarantee whatsoever that those workers are going to be re-employed by any reorganization of that program. He's fully aware of that, and he must state to the country, the government must state to the country the process by which they are going to engage those new contractors, because those contractors that have been impacted, the 300 contractors that have been impacted, CPEP alone I'm talking about, they have been hired in accordance with practice, with established practice. They are all OPR compliant, and there's a process for so doing. So when you throw them out of the program on the basis that new contractors, and note every time they seek to undermine any program of the PNM, they accuse the program of all manners of things, corruption, this and anything. The same thing he did for WASA, the same thing he accused it of, the worst thing, because that is the basis upon which they use to undermine and to disrupt these programs. So I want to flag this particular point and to let workers know, do not be fooled again by the government spokespersons that they are going to be re-engaged under some other program, because the government cannot instruct private contractors who to employ and who not to employ, because he said it that those employees have no affiliation with CPEP, that they are engaged by private contractors, and therefore the government has no responsibility where they are concerned.
Did you get any information about contracts not being renewed under the Ministry of Sport? Do you have any figures for that ministry?
We don't have the precise figures, but we are also aware that a number of programs under the former Ministry of Youth Development, now under the Ministry of Sports, those programs they have been undermined, that they are not in full operation, and as a result of that, persons who have been employed to run these programs, they are now out of a job. So the figures are still coming in, and that's the reason why my colleague Senator Alwari is saying that so far the figure is that it is about 19,000, but it could be well close to 20,000 people that are already impacted by 2 months of UNC governance.
I want to ask, all of this is happening on the eve of the visit of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. We are seeing preparations taking place for that, grass cutting, posters and banners being put up. What are your thoughts on that?
Trinidad and Tobago is very blessed to have a leader of a state such as India visit us. And we, of course, welcome warmly Prime Minister Modi to Trinidad and Tobago, and are honored that he would be attending this country in his southern tours, because he's headed to South America next. I think that his visit here is mutually exclusive to the UNC burning down the country. Because it cannot be that you fire 20,000 people and you don't have a big problem. We are a responsible opposition, and we will not conflate the two issues. We, of course, had invitations to Prime Minister Modi coming when we were in government. I recall vividly that the High Commission's staff here, the Indian High Commission, had told us that Prime Minister Modi would be on a southern tour, and if that was the case, there was the possibility he could visit. And we're very pleased to see that that has happened. So let's welcome him profoundly to this to our beautiful country. What I think is just very unfortunate is that this really underlines even much more the need for a caring government to actually be speaking to people. It cannot be that your caring is evidenced by, well, you are collateral damage, and where we dealing with the PNM boys and girls and financiers as the little butcher describes it. But we have to be extremely careful. And forgive me, these are terms that people are using widely in social media right now, this yellow curse and the butchering of people's lives. I mean, I don't mean to be derogatory to anybody in office. Governance is not an easy task, and I wish this country well, including the government well. But I think that it would be underlined even more that the government should be taking very active steps to say, listen, folks, we will identify a process, fear not, we have support services for you. There are temporary food cards available for you, the single mothers. There's a mass program of retrenchment. We have the Ministry of the People. We have social service. There's a hotline for you. If you need counseling, this happens. If your children can't go to school for a book list, here's a grant. Have you heard any of that? We are in the middle of a mid-year budget right now that just came to an end. The CPEP retrenchment, the mass firing of all of CPEP happened on, we spoke about it on the weekend. We were in the Senate on Monday and Tuesday. We didn't finish the mid-year until Tuesday. Wasn't it open to say, well, in the mid-year, we will deal with the effects of this repercussion? There was nothing said. It's not as if those examples are not there. The opportunities are right there. What you're getting is collateral damage, PNM boys and girls. We go deal with you. We have to purge the country. You can't talk. I mean, the most poignant contribution coming from, what's his name, Philip Alexander, was the way I look. His commentary on the way I look. Mr. Alexander, I don't want your affections in any form or fashion. I mean, I'm telling you the truth, that whilst I was standing in the parliament, all that the man could do was shout across the floor about the way I look. Look at him. Look at how he's look. When people get sent home.
Which is why I want to ask, if you juxtapose the meager salaries that you referenced, around $1,400 a fortnight for people working CPEP, with the incoming arrival of a diplomat, the rolling out of a red carpet, the fanfare that will obviously come with hosting Prime Minister Modi, do you think that this is appropriate at this time?
Well, what's not appropriate is what they're doing to the workers in the silence and vacuum that they're doing it. It is very appropriate for Prime Minister Modi to visit Trinidad and Tobago, and we're very honored. The choice is the government's choice as to treating with their own. I mean, this almost looks like a B movie where there's a chaos going on whilst there's a partying going on. It's tragic. And the option here, the question has nothing to do with the distinguished Prime Minister of India's visit. From my perspective, it has to do with the government having a choice to deal with the hearts and minds of the people that they have brutalized. Nearly 20,000 people they have brutalized and sent home. And their answers to those of us who stand up as advocates of the people is, well, you can't talk because of the way you look. You have heard it yourselves. That is just wrong.
This question is for anyone on the table there.
Before you go, Arnold Jensen, please forgive me. I just probably want to add to Senator Arari's response to Doris. This government is very calculated. They do nothing by chance. I regard them as very, very calculated, based on the bills that they bring to Parliament, the timing of the bills they bring to Parliament. And I dare say that what they are doing right now with respect to CPEP workers and forestry workers was well-timed. Well-timed because we just came out of a budget where the Ministry of Rural Development asked for a further supplementation of $60 million for CPEP. And that $60 million was to pay for salaries and management fees for contractors, including 12 additional contractors that were brought into the program. And the minister said that that would be enough to take the program to pay contractual obligations towards the end of this fiscal year. And nowhere, absolutely nowhere, did the minister indicate in her contribution, you can go back to it, that the plan of the government was to do exactly that, what they're doing right now. Nowhere. I'm saying that they are very calculated because perhaps the government is fully aware that the Indian head of state was going to be visiting Trinidad and Tobago at this point in time. Of course, it's advance notice. It doesn't happen overnight. And therefore, the timing of this butchering that is taking place with CPEP and in the reforestation program, and the timing of the visit of this head of state could probably be intended to be a political distraction. They are very calculated. So it is perhaps a well-coordinated political distraction to get the population, the citizens of this country, to focus on this high-level visit as opposed to what is happening to 19,000 citizens losing their jobs and not knowing how they're going to feed their families next week.
Let me add to that. We just had massive flooding in Trinidad. You heard any complaints? You heard any complaints of drama? The whole of Woodlands, the whole of Penal, many other places in North and other areas had serious disaster. Did you hear any complaints? In San Fernando West, massive potholes, structures going on, nothing to be said. It's almost as if crime and murder does not exist in Trinidad and Tobago again. It's no longer covered in the media. There's no sensationalism around it. We accept this common sense that you need a honeymoon period and a certain amount of time to settle in. But I dare say that the attitude of our people is very different, perhaps commendably so. It seems that people are much more understanding these days than they have been for a while. And that's encouraging. But I respectfully believe that the 20,000 people in this situation is not a matter that should be treated that way. There has to be a degree of compassion and understanding from the government that has the remedy available to talk to people, speak to rehiring, speak to social support and welfare, speak to education support and welfare, food. None of that is being said. And therefore, there's a glaring silence that has to be addressed.
Before I ask my question, I just want to point out the sensationalism in the media that you pointed out a short while ago. Doesn't exist, but there has been a continuous reduction in serious crime, particularly murders in the last couple of months. I think we're 95 less than we were last year. I said that just by the way, we don't sensationalize. But this issue that we are facing now with employees being sent home, contracts being terminated beforehand, what do you think legislatively can be done to ensure that this does not happen again? Because history has shown that these things will repeat itself. Another government will come in place and the same thing would happen, or possibly not. Possibly not.
I think we both have answers to that. I don't think there's anything legislatively to be done. I think that this is why we all know what the courts tell us good industrial relations looks like. That you have to have behavior which is not harsh and oppressive. You have a choice, We had a choice in 2015 to fire CPEP contractors, URP workers, and forestry workers. We did not do it. I had a choice to fire Brian Baig, who was working in the AG's office. I did not do it. So there's a choice that you have to have. You can't fetter a government by legislating that contracts are permanent in law. The only place that exists, and there's still a mechanism for escape, is in the public service, insofar as you have protection for the public servants. But on the point of the murders and the sensationalism, I'm sure you would agree that 95 murders less were not purchased automatically on April 28th. The state of emergency, which was complained about, had a lot to do with that. The intelligence, the work. My friend here was the Minister of National Security. So it could not be that is to be attributed only to the advent of the UNC, is my point. So I don't think that there's something legislatively to be done. I think that this is where you have to be responsible. If the government's intention is to reformulate a plan, no problems. If you want to reorganize CPEP, you want to reorganize forestry, you want to improve its positions, no problems on a policy basis. How you treat with the incumbent workers, the people who work in there right now, is the question. You have choices. If you have to treat with them, you have an example. You have the Petrotrin model. You invite the union in, you have discussions, you have workers' representatives, you come up with exit plans, you create a soft landing. All of that was done in Petrotrin. You will agree, go back and check it. It was done. When the decision was made, the union leaders left the meeting, but they were fully involved all the time. They had advanced. Nothing was a surprise, folks. So the choice is what this government does. Folks, we sit in the Senate. There are 15 people sitting opposite me. 13 of them are ministers or parliamentary secretaries. I'm going to repeat that. Of the 15 people sitting opposite me, 13 of them have a work in the government. The other two, one is the vice president, so can't have a ministry. And the next one is the famous Mr. Big. So one person out of the entire 15 does not have a government job. You understand the manpower we are employing in this country to have a heart? How many people in the Ministry of Social Development and the people? How many people in the Ministry of Finance? How many people inside of the ministries of public utilities? Everybody is a minister in the ministry of that ministry and this ministry. Really? And everybody mouth full and can't say nothing? Nah, that's not good enough.
Jensen, just to add to what Senator Alvari said in response to that last question. First, I want to tell you that what is happening right now in Trinidad and Tobago under this government is unprecedented. Never in the history of government transition or political transition that we've ever had a situation where 19,000 workers felt the brunt of political transition that came out of revenge, spite, and vindictiveness. And I'm not saying that because it sounds good. I'm saying it because when you listen to the government's key spokespersons on this particular issue, especially Barry the Butcher and collateral damage Clyde, it speaks to the level of wickedness that is taking place that is unprecedented in the history of Trinidad and Tobago. So I don't think we need any law for this because we have laws to protect workers. But every government minister, I want to say that, every government minister, before he takes office, he swears to uphold the Constitution and the law and to operate without fear, favor, malice, or ill will. And what you are seeing here is a government having assumed office, taking their oath of office, are operating with malice and ill will in Trinidad and Tobago and bad faith. In 2010, again, because you see, the UNC has a track record. Go back to the track record of the UNC. On this occasion, it is on steroids. But in 2010, when the UNC came into government, they did something similar to the URP, where hundreds of URP workers were fired. And you know what? Most of them filed action in the courts. And the courts awarded them millions of dollars in compensation and damages for how they were treated by that 2010 to 2015 UNC government. Millions of dollars in damages. So we don't need laws. What we need is politicians and office holders to abide by the oath of office that they take, to comply with the Constitution and the law, and not operate with malice and ill will, as we are seeing here today in this country. 19,000 innocent citizens are now being victims of persons having taken their oath of office, are now victims of politicians who are now operating with malice and ill will. And we don't need laws for that. What we need in this country is politicians who operate in this way to face the political consequences of their behavior.
We note that it's coming close to 7 and that you may have some editing time to do. So perhaps we ought to bring the conference to a close unless there's any other question coming from the floor.
I just want to know how soon you guys are planning to go to the High Court with these matters.
So we are acting with emergency and urgency on that. We intend to act with alacrity, meaning ASAP. Today's event has caused us need to add some more information to the actions that we're doing. So let me not give you an immediate answer to that, because as a lawyer, facts are necessary to put into the statements of case and other positions that we're doing and the affidavit evidence. So urgency. In fact, we have an attorneys meeting just after this one.
And who are the attorneys?
Today, you know what I found was very interesting? I heard that all of the information on the CPEP website was removed.
Oh yeah, the site is down.
The site is down.
Who are the attorneys involved, and who's the senior counsel leading the?
We have several attorneys involved. We have Larry Lala, senior counsel. We have Keith Scotland, senior counsel. I'm involved. Marvin is involved. Our leader of the opposition is involved. We have Kareem, and we have others assisting, because right now we're dealing with people across the country. So we're literally dealing with thousands of people at the same time. So we have to collate them into different groups and categories. You've got workers' rights, you have contractors' rights, you have other rights. So it's not as simple as the CPEP people, because there are different iterations of CPEP people, or the forestry people. So we have to make this right, because you have an obligation in law to approach the court prepared and to make sure that the reliefs that you're seeking are sustainable reliefs. Of course, it's pro bono. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you
Very
very much.
appreciate it.